He thinks I'm too old to notice. That's what gets me most. Not the lies. Not the way he touches my things when he thinks I'm not looking. But the quiet, practiced confidence of a man who believes his own mother has gone soft in the head. Nathan always knocks the same way. 3 short taps, then a pause, then one longer knock like a punctuation mark. "Hey, Ma," he calls through the door, cheerful, loud, false. Today I let him in without smiling. The casserole was still in the oven when he arrived, beef and potato, the way his father liked it. Nathan stood in the doorway of my little kitchen, hands in his pockets, surveying the room like a real estate agent. He always does that now. Scans things. Takes mental inventory. "You need help with anything?" he asked, peering toward the back hallway. "Maybe get those old files sorted in the study? You know, clear some of that paper mess?" I wiped my hands on a dish towel and didn't answer right away. Instead, I poured him some iced tea and slid the glass toward his usual chair. "You always ask about that room these days," I said. "Funny." He chuckled. "I just worry about you, Ma. Lot of stuff in there. Could be important documents you've forgotten about." He means the deed. He doesn't say it, but it's written all over him. I built this house with Walter 43 years ago, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. We had help. Friends from church, a neighbor who did roofing, one of Walter's co-workers who laid the tile in the bathroom for a case of beer. We made it ours. There are pencil marks on the closet wall from when Nathan was a boy. He was 7 the last time I measured his height, right before the school called to say he'd punched a boy for mocking his stutter. Back then, he came to me with his bruises and apologies. Now he comes with smiles and plans. "Ma," he said, sipping his tea, "have you ever thought about setting up a trust? You know, just in case, to make things easier for me and the kids when the time comes." I looked at him carefully. His face is leaner now. He lost weight when Janet put them both on that keto nonsense. His voice still carries that salesman's lilt. Smooth, pleasant, a little too rehearsed. "When the time comes?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "You know what I mean," he said quickly. "You're healthy now, thank God. But it's better to be prepared. You don't want the courts involved. Probate is a nightmare." I stared at the window. The hydrangeas Walter planted were drooping. They needed watering. "You want to talk about probate?" I said slowly. "Or you want to ask if I've put your name on the deed yet?" Nathan flushed. Just for a second. Then he laughed. "Ma, don't be like that. Of course not. I'm just trying to help." He doesn't know I already checked. Last week I called the bank myself, the one where we keep the safety deposit box. I had the deed pulled, just to make sure. And this morning, I found a letter in the mailbox. Sealed, with Nathan's name, but sent to my address. It had the logo of a law firm on it. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I recognized the name. A real estate attorney. "Dinner's ready," I said, cutting the conversation short. We ate mostly in silence. Nathan kept glancing toward the study. After dessert, he offered again, help with old papers, help with sorting out the future. I told him I was tired and that he should go. He kissed me on the cheek before leaving. "You know I love you, Ma." I smiled just enough. "Of course you do." When the door closed behind him, I locked it. Then I walked straight to the hallway, opened the study, and sat down in Walter's old leather chair. I opened the drawer where I keep the documents. The deed, the will, the folder labeled Home. Nathan thinks I'm too old to notice, but I see it now. All of it. And I'm going to make sure he sees me too. It came tucked between a utility bill and a coupon flyer, just like any other envelope. white, official, with a smoothness that didn't match the rest of my life. I don't get much mail these days, not the kind that matters. So when I saw his name printed neatly on the front, Nathaniel Brooks, and my address underneath, something in me paused. I placed it on the kitchen table, untouched, made myself tea, washed a bowl, came back and stared at it again. I didn't open it. Not because I'm afraid of what's inside, I already know. But because once you open something like that, you lose the luxury of pretending, of waiting, of giving someone the benefit of the doubt just one more time. My name's not on that envelope, but this house is mine. That's enough to make it my business. Nathan always did have a way of assuming ownership of things. As a boy, he'd borrow toys from friends and claim he forgot whose they were. He took over the TV remote, the front seat of the car, the last piece of pie without asking. It was just how he moved through the world, with a quiet certainty that what he wanted should naturally become his. I used to think it was confidence. I even admired it once. But now I see it for what it is, a hunger that's never learned the word enough. I left the envelope on the table and went to the front porch. The air was heavy with the smell of coming rain. From my rocker, I watched the neighborhood carry on like it always has. Dogs barking, someone mowing a lawn 2 houses over, children riding bikes past the same oak tree that Walter and I planted the year after Nathan was born. A rustle of footsteps behind me made me turn. It was Zach, my grandson. 17, with 2 big sneakers and hair that never quite does what he wants it to. He was holding a school folder, pretending to be casual, but his face gave him away. "Hey, Grandma," he said, voice low. "Hey, sweetheart." I nodded to the chair beside me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He didn't sit right away, just stood there, shifting his weight from foot to foot, the way Nathan used to when he'd broken something and was working up the nerve to confess. "I need to tell you something," Zach said finally. "But I don't want to get in trouble." "You won't," I said, "unless you set the kitchen on fire. Did you?" That got the smallest smile out of him, but it faded fast. "It's about my dad," he said, voice cracking a little on the word. "I heard him talking last night. To Mom." He didn't look at me as he spoke, just kept his eyes on the porch floorboards, as if the truth might be safer there. "They were talking about you, about the house, about how maybe it's time to start transferring things before it gets too complicated." My fingers tightened around the armrest. "They said," Zach continued, "that you're, getting older. That maybe you wouldn't understand the paperwork if they moved quick. That it would be easier to have everything in his name before something happens." He finally looked at me then, eyes wide, frightened and ashamed. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was getting a glass of water. The rain started then, a soft tapping against the porch roof, steady and unhurried, like a clock counting down. "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice steady. "That must have been hard." He nodded, looking like he might cry. "I don't want him to be mad at me." "He won't know it came from you," I said. The envelope was still on the kitchen table when I went back inside. I didn't open it that night either. Instead, I pulled out the thick file from my drawer, the one labeled Brooks Family. I flipped through receipts, photocopies, legal forms. The original deed, signed in 1980. My will. A copy of Walter's. The only name on anything that mattered was mine, and it's going to stay that way. The first time Nathan mentioned the deed, he did it with a joke. We were in the kitchen. He was fixing the back porch light, or pretending to. He had a screwdriver in one hand and that usual look on his face, the one he wears when he's doing me a favor and wants credit for it later. "You know, Ma," he said, standing up and brushing dust from his knees, "I should really take a look at the house deed one of these days, just to make sure everything's in order. You wouldn't want the county to come after you for a missed tax or something." It was the way he said, "one of these days." So casual, so warm, like asking about the weather, but I heard the tremor beneath it. He was fishing. I wiped my hands on my apron and leaned against the doorframe. "Taxes come to me directly," I said, "and I pay them like I always have." He smiled like I'd just made a cute mistake. Right. Of course. I'm just saying, it might be smart to add someone else to the title, in case something happens. Paperwork gets real messy if the property's still in a single name." "Messy for who?" I asked. He laughed. "For the family. For us. Probate's a disaster. We'd be doing it for your peace of mind." There it was again. We'd be doing it for you. As if betrayal, when wrapped in good intentions, doesn't cut just as deep. I didn't answer him that time. Just went back to rinsing dishes while he rattled around on the porch, pretending he knew what wires did what. A few days later, he brought it up again, this time after taking me to lunch. We'd gone to the diner on Main, the one with the good chicken and dumplings. He insisted on paying the bill. He made a show of it. "You've done enough for me over the years," he said. "Let me do something for you for a change. But I've learned something about people like Nathan. When they start acting generous, it's not charity, it's leverage." As we walked back to the car, he started again. "You ever think about downsizing?" he asked. "This house is big, Ma. You're here alone. Wouldn't it be easier to sell it? Move somewhere smaller, maybe with assisted living options?" I looked at him sharply. I didn't know I needed assistance. He put up his hands like I'd misheard him. "I mean, just in case. A place with people to check in. Fewer stairs. No roof to fix." "The roof's fine," I said. "But it won't be forever," he said. "And the longer you wait to plan, the harder it'll be later." I didn't say anything. We got in the car, and I stared out the window the whole ride home. He kept talking. About safety. About simplicity. About doing what's right. But all I heard was the word "take," hidden under all the concern. Every sentence a chisel, tapping away at something that wasn't his. That night, I pulled out the deed again, not because I'd forgotten what was on it, but because I wanted to remind myself of the truth. Walter's name was crossed through with a clean black line. He's been gone 10 years now. My name stood alone, bold, undisputed. It's not that I'm attached to the building. Wood and paint can be replaced. But this house, this home, was built on sweat, on laughter, on nights spent with dirty hands and sore backs, and a baby asleep in a bassinet in the next room. It's where I sat up with Walter when his blood pressure spiked, where I taught Nathan how to make scrambled eggs, where we read bedtime stories until he didn't want them anymore. It's mine. And no one, not even my son, is going to convince me I'm too old to know what that means. I used to think love meant giving without asking, that if you gave enough, time, patience, money, people would understand, would return the care without needing to be told how. But somewhere between diaper changes and college tuition, I learned that giving without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. Nathan was born 3 weeks early and still came out howling, fists clenched, like he was already negotiating with the world. I loved him instantly, in that helpless, terrifying way only mothers understand. I held him through colic, croup, first crushes, bad grades, and worse friends. I watched him become a man with a voice that could sell anything and a smile that made people forget to read the fine print. The house was a gift long before anyone thought to take it. Walter and I poured everything into it. We patched drywall after Nathan's baseball cracked it. We scrubbed wine out of the carpet after his high school graduation party got out of hand. We replaced the furnace the year I turned 65, not because I needed heat, but because Nathan said it would be better for resale someday. Resale. Even then, I laughed. I've paid for more than I should have. His first car, because he couldn't get a loan. His moving expenses when he left Janet the first time. The deposit on their forever home, even though they sold it 3 years later and moved again. I told myself I was helping. That's what mothers do. But helping becomes something else when it's expected. When it stops being gratitude and starts being entitlement. I saw the shift after Walter died. Nathan called more often then, checking in, dropping by. He offered to go through the paperwork with me. He brought over frozen meals, smiled wide, and said I didn't need to worry about anything anymore. It took me a while to see that what he meant was, I'd like to start handling things now. I'd like the keys, the codes, the copies. I'd like quiet control handed over gently without a fuss. But I'm not built for quiet surrender. After Zach's visit, after his nervous confession, I sat in the study for a long time. The envelope still lay on the table, unopened, silent, waiting like a loaded gun no one had picked up yet. I didn't need to read it. I'd heard enough. Zach's voice trembled when he told me what they'd said. How his parents assumed I wouldn't understand. How they were planning to meet with a lawyer the following week. Just to get the document started. They didn't know he'd been standing by the stairs. They didn't know he still loved me in the old-fashioned way, the way that included respect. I got up, turned on the kettle, and called Virginia. Virginia Kemp and I met 40 years ago at a school board meeting. She was the only woman in a navy suit and heels, surrounded by men who thought women didn't know anything about budget allocation. She proved them wrong before the first recess. We'd stayed friends ever since. Through my grief and her divorce, through 3 job changes, and the death of her mother. When she picked up the phone, she didn't say hello. She said, "What's he done now?" I smiled, despite myself. "He's trying to take the house, Virginia." A pause. "Tell me everything." I did. She listened, without interrupting. Then she said, "I'll be there Friday at 6. Don't sign anything, and don't open that envelope." Friday at 6. That's when Nathan thinks he's coming for dinner. He thinks I'll make roast chicken and pretend nothing's wrong. That I'll smile and play the role he's written for me. Old, grateful, and a little bit tired. But I'm inviting someone else to that table now, and the menu's changed. Zach knocked on my door, pale and shaking, 2 nights before the dinner. I'd just taken the laundry off the line. The soft kind of late afternoon, where the light turns gold and everything smells like sun-warmed cotton. I wasn't expecting company. When I opened the door and saw him there, holding his backpack like a lifeline, I knew something had shifted again. "Grandma," he said, barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I stepped aside. "What happened?" He walked in like someone who'd been told to keep a secret and couldn't carry it anymore. He sat at the kitchen table without waiting to be told, the way people do when the news they carry is heavier than manners. I shouldn't be here, he said. Dad would be furious. Is he the reason you're pale as a sheet? I asked, pouring him water. Zach didn't answer. He just pulled his hoodie tighter around himself, then reached into his backpack and slid out a crumpled paper. Printed email with my address in the header. I took it, he said. I know that's wrong, but I heard Dad and Mom talking last night. Again. They said Friday's dinner is the last step. That by next week the house would be settled. Settled, I repeated. He nodded. The lawyer already drew up preliminary transfer documents. Dad said you just have to sign. That Virginia, the lawyer you used with Grandpa, wouldn't stand in the way. That you wouldn't either. The rage didn't come immediately. First, there was a wave of sorrow so deep it almost knocked the breath out of me. He thinks I'm so far gone, I won't notice the shape of my own signature changing hands. Why did you take this? I asked gently, tapping the paper. Zach looked up then. His eyes were glassy. Because I heard what they said about you, about how you're still sharp enough to be trouble. They laughed. Mom said you'd come around once you were made to feel like it was your own idea. I leaned against the sink, gripping the counter hard enough to make my fingers ache. I didn't know what to do, he said, but I didn't want them to trick you. You're not confused. You're the only one in this family who says what she means. That did it. The anger came then, not loud, but cold, like steel through snow. I reached for the paper and slid it into a drawer. Thank you for telling me, I said. Zach blinked. Aren't you, I don't know, furious? Oh, I am, I said, but not at you. He exhaled like he'd been holding it for an hour. You're brave, I added. I hope you keep that part of yourself. He gave a small, grateful nod. You're not going to let him do it, are you? No, I said. I'm not. We sat for a while in silence, the kind that sits deep in your bones. 2 generations joined by a truth too bitter to ignore. When Zach finally stood to leave, I walked him to the porch. He turned on the step, hesitating. Does this mean the dinner's off? I smiled, but not kindly. Dinner's still on, just not the way your father planned. He called me forgetful once too often. It started small. A chuckle when I lost my keys, a gentle correction when I repeated a story. Then it grew. Ma, you already told me that. You've got a lot on your mind these days. You're not getting any younger. At first, I brushed it off. We all forget things. But there's a difference between a moment of memory loss and the kind of forgetting people try to push onto you. The kind that rewrites your place in the room, turns your years into something pitiful instead of something earned. He used it like a tool, a quiet little hammer chipping away at credibility. That was the first lie he told, that I was slipping. The second was that I needed help. The third, that the help came without strings. But I've still got all my strings tied tight, and I remember every knot. After Zach's visit, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid. I stopped being afraid the day Walter died, and I faced the world with nothing but a half-paid mortgage and a box of his tools. But because the anger wouldn't let me rest. Nathan thinks he's clever. Thinks he's the first man to put on a good face while stealing from his own blood. But I've lived long enough to see every kind of betrayal dressed up in Sunday manners. So I got up before dawn. I pulled out every file I've kept, every letter, every statement. I organized them into neat piles. The deed, the will, the account summaries, the power of attorney forms I'd signed back when Walter got sick. And again, when Nathan convinced me to make things simpler. I realized then how much I'd handed over without protest, little by little. Sign here, just in case. It'll save trouble down the road. Down the road turned out to be now. The last form I touched was the durable power of attorney. His name sat there, bold and undeserved. Nathaniel Brooks, agent. I stared at that word, agent. I could almost hear him saying it, that charming, practiced voice of his. It's just legal language, Ma. Doesn't mean anything unless something happens. Well, something happened. By noon, I was sitting across from Virginia Kemp in her office. She hadn't changed a bit. Still sharp. Still no nonsense. Still the kind of woman who made male attorneys drop their pens and rethink their arguments. I'm revoking everything, I told her, handing over the stack. Power of attorney, beneficiaries, access, all of it. Virginia looked over the papers, nodding. And we'll draft a new will? We will, I said. And I want a trust. Irrevocable. Ironclad. Zach gets a share. Nathan gets a polite distance. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. What happened? Let's just say I'm not as forgetful as I've been told. She didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Good. It's about time. We worked for 3 hours. She explained the legal layers, how to secure the house, the accounts, the decisions. She asked clear, pointed questions and listened when I answered. She wrote things down in crisp, confident strokes. When we were done, she handed me a copy of the first draft. It'll be finalized by Friday, she said. Should I bring it to the house? Yes, I said. But come at 6. Stay for dinner. She raised an eyebrow. My son's expecting a roast chicken and a signature. Virginia sat back in her chair, a slow grin forming. Well then, she said, I'll bring dessert. My lawyer's name is Virginia, and she remembers everything, every handshake, every clause, every time someone said, this won't matter later, and was wrong. She showed up Friday evening in a navy blazer, slacks sharp enough to slice bread, and a folder tucked under her arm like a loaded weapon. You made chicken, she said, sniffing the air as I let her in. Nathan likes it, or used to. And you invited him for dinner? I did, I said. I thought he'd appreciate a home-cooked meal before losing access to all my assets. Virginia didn't laugh, not loudly, but her eyes twinkled. That was enough. We set the table together, just the way Walter liked it. Heavy flatware, cloth napkins, my best plates, the kind of detail people reserve for guests they care about, or for performances that need to be remembered. She laid the folder down beside her plate. You're sure about this? She asked, for the 4th time this week. I poured her tea. I'm too old for doubt, and too awake for denial. At 6:15, the doorbell rang. 3 short knocks. A pause. 1 long one. Just like always. I opened the door, and there he stood, my son, Nathan Brooks. Button-down shirt, slacks, too much cologne. That smile that had sold 4 condos and 1 broken promise last year alone. Hey, Ma, he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. Smells amazing. I stepped back, letting him in. Dinner's ready. Hope you're hungry. His smile faltered slightly when he saw Virginia, but he recovered quickly. Oh, he said. I didn't realize we had company. I thought you should meet the woman who's keeping you from stealing my house, I said calmly. Nathan blinked. Virginia stood and extended her hand. Virginia Kemp. I believe we've corresponded. Indirectly. He hesitated, then shook her hand, his grip too tight, a show of dominance. He always did that with men, too. We sat. I served the chicken. He barely touched it. I talked about the garden, the neighbors, the roof needing repairs. Virginia asked about the new tax ordinance, pretending not to know Nathan had failed to file my property paperwork 3 years ago. He squirmed. Finally, after pushing peas around his plate long enough, Nathan cleared his throat. "So, Ma," he said, "about that document. The transfer, I won't be signing anything tonight," I said. His eyes flicked to Virginia. "That's what this is about?" "This is about a lie," I replied. "Several, actually. And I've had enough." He leaned back, folding his arms. "I think you're overreacting." "And I think you've mistaken kindness for weakness," I said. Virginia opened the folder. "Mrs. Brooks has drafted a new will," she said. "A trust is being established. The deed remains in her name. The power of attorney has been revoked. All previous authorizations nullified as of this morning." Nathan stared at her, then at me. "You did all this behind my back?" "I did it in front of your behavior," I said, which was louder than any conversation. He opened his mouth, closed it. The chicken steamed gently between us. He stood up. "This is a mistake. You're not thinking clearly. You're tired." "No," I said. "I'm finally thinking clearly, because I'm not tired. Not anymore." He left without dessert. Virginia refilled my teacup. "You know," she said, "I brought chocolate torte. Still want it?" I smiled. "Absolutely." He was expecting roast chicken. He got an attorney. Nathan parked his car the same way he always did. Too fast, too close to the edge of the lawn. He didn't knock the second time. Just opened the door and walked in like it was already his. That was the moment I realized he didn't see this house as mine anymore. He saw it as a delay, an inevitability waiting to be signed over. He stopped short when he saw Virginia seated at the table, her glasses resting low on her nose, a legal pad beside her salad plate. "Mom," he said slowly, "what's going on?" "Dinner," I replied. "Like we planned." He looked from her to me, then back again. "You invited a lawyer to our family dinner?" "No," Virginia said evenly. "Your mother invited her lawyer to her dinner." Nathan didn't sit. "Is this about the deed?" I gestured to the empty chair. "You might want to eat something first." He sat, reluctantly, picked up his fork. "Put it down." Virginia slid a document toward him. "That's a revocation of your power of attorney. Dated, signed, and notarized." "You've got to be kidding me," he said, looking between us. "She's not," I said. "I've changed everything, Nathan. The trust, the will, the house. Nothing you discussed with that firm will go through. You have no legal standing now. You never should have." His face flushed red, then white. "This is because of Zach, isn't it?" he hissed. "He's been snooping. You let a child come between—" "No," I said, calm as ever. "This is because I opened my eyes, and what I saw was a son who mistook control for love. You don't understand how complicated these things are," he snapped. "You've always needed someone to handle the details." Virginia leaned forward. "Actually, your mother is fully competent, medically, legally, mentally. I've documented everything. She doesn't need you to handle anything, Mr. Brooks." He stood up, shoving the chair back with a scrape. "This is ridiculous. After everything I've done for you—" "What exactly have you done?" I asked, cutting him off. "Tell me, Nathan. Remind me." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "I fed you, clothed you, paid for your college, your first apartment, your car, your children's tuition. I sat in hospitals, filled out paperwork, gave up vacations." What have you done for me, other than count down the days until I die?" "You don't mean that," he said, eyes narrowing. "But I do," I said, "and you should hear it." The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a truth too big to step around. Finally, Nathan looked at Virginia. "You'll regret this, both of you." "No," she said, "but you might." He walked out without saying goodbye. The screen door slapped shut behind him. Virginia reached for the wine bottle. "Do you still want dessert?" "I do," I said, "but let's eat it in the living room. I feel like sitting somewhere that doesn't smell like betrayal." She laughed, and I let her. I even laughed a little myself. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" I asked him the next morning, standing in the doorway of my own living room as if it were a courtroom. Nathan had come back. Of course he had. He never could leave anything unfinished, not if there was a chance of salvaging control. But this time he didn't bother knocking. He stood in the middle of my rug, arms folded, eyes darting toward the hallway, where the safe is. "Mom, we need to talk." "No," I said. "We need to finish." He shifted his weight, tried for charm. "Look, I know last night got out of hand, but you don't understand how complicated all this is." "Stop saying that," I said. "You think if you repeat it enough, I'll start believing I'm too stupid to see what you've done." He raised his hands. "I was trying to make sure things were clean, simple." "No, you were trying to make sure the house was yours before I knew what papers I'd signed." He frowned. "It's not like that." "I've read the letter, Nathan. The one from that attorney. The one you had mailed here." He paled, just enough. "So yes, it is exactly like that." I stepped closer, not afraid, not even angry now, just clear. "You were going to have me sign a transfer under the pretense of updating records. Quietly. No announcement. No warning. And then I would have woken up a tenant in my own home." He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize either. "I was protecting our future," he said. "This house should stay in the family." "It's already in the family," I said. "You just assumed I'd leave quietly if you made it look official." He sighed, that familiar condescending breath that once worked on realtors, insurance agents, maybe even women he dated. But not on me. "Why would you think I'd let you do this?" I asked. "Because you always do," he said quietly. "You always say yes." And that's when I realized he wasn't baffled by my resistance. He was offended by it. He had built an entire belief system around my compliance. My silence was his safety net. "You've had control for too long," I said, "and it wasn't yours to have." He took a step forward, but I held up my hand. "Don't. I've already contacted the bank. I know about the monthly transfers, the quiet little payments to cover expenses you never discussed. I know you used my accounts to secure a short-term loan for your business idea last year. That loan was repaid. But not by you," I said. "By me. You used my name and credit to pad your mistakes." He lowered his gaze then, not in shame, in calculation. The wheels turning again. What angle was left? "I can't believe you're doing this," he muttered. "No," I said. "You can't believe I finally am." He turned toward the door. "I don't want to lose you, Mom," he said, voice quieter now. "You're still my mother." "Yes," I said. "But I'm no longer your opportunity." He paused, one hand on the doorknob. "I thought I was helping," he said again, weakly. "You were helping yourself." He left without another word. I stood in the hallway long after the door closed, listening, feeling the house settle around me again. My house. My name still on the deed. My breath steady. Let him storm. Let him spin. I am no longer the woman he assumed I'd always be. Even my china dishes were tired of lies. I stood at the sink after Nathan left, up to my wrists in warm water, scrubbing the last of the dinner plates from the night before. My hands moved slowly, methodically. Not because they were weak, but because I was thinking. Replaying the conversation, watching his face when the truth refused to bend for him. The teacup in my hand was cracked, a hairline fracture along the rim. I traced it with my thumb. I had a matching one once, broken the day Nathan knocked over the serving tray during an argument with Janet. He was 33, still acting like every raised voice was someone else's fault. I remember sweeping up the porcelain while they shouted on the porch. I remember apologizing, as if I'd done something wrong by offering tea. That's what women my age do. We apologize by habit, for the noise, for the tension, for the inconvenience of our own presence. But I'm done apologizing for the messes I didn't make. I dried the plate, careful not to stack it with the others. The chipped edge might spread. I'd throw it out later, quietly, with dignity. By noon, I'd cleaned the kitchen, wiped the table, reset the silver drawer that Nathan had rifled through last week looking for extra stamps. He hadn't needed stamps. He was looking for papers, receipts, proof of ownership. He thought I wouldn't notice. I noticed. The house was too still now. The kind of still that comes after a storm breaks and leaves everything damp but untouched. I walked through it, slowly, down the hall, into the den, past the old armchair Walter used to claim every evening with a sigh and a newspaper. I paused at the closet door, the one in the guest room that hadn't been opened in years. Inside were boxes of files, some labeled, others not. I knew what I was looking for, and I found it, right where I'd left it. The original deed, folded inside a manila envelope, wrapped in an old scarf of Walter's. When he was dying, Walter made me promise one thing. Don't let them corner you into kindness. I'd laughed at the time. It's just who I am, I told him. But he knew something then that I'm only learning now. Sometimes kindness becomes a trap. Sometimes people take your softness and build themselves a throne from it. I took the envelope to the dining table and laid it flat. There it was, in black ink. My name. No second signatory. No fine print. I traced the letters with the side of my finger. Still mine. For now. I should have felt relief. But what I felt was grief. Not for the house, not even for Nathan. For all the moments I'd let pass, for every sure I'd said when I wanted to say no. For every time I'd told myself he's just stressed, he means well, he's still my son. That was the trick. The sentence we repeat until we're hollow. He's still my son. And yet, a stranger wouldn't have tried to sign a deed behind my back. A stranger wouldn't have laughed about my mental fade to justify a lie. A stranger wouldn't have made dinner plans with manipulation tucked neatly inside the mashed potatoes. So maybe he is my son. But I don't know the man he's become. I folded the deed again, slid it back into the scarf. This time, I locked it away. And then I did something simple. Something nobody would notice unless they'd been paying attention. I went into the kitchen, made myself a proper cup of tea, and sat at the head of the table, my table, and put my feet up on the chair across from me. No one else was coming. And for once, I didn't feel alone. I felt free. I found the original deed, wrapped in a scarf, tucked inside the box labeled Receipts 1983. Not exactly a safe, But it worked. That scarf still smelled faintly of Walter, cedarwood, and the faintest trace of motor oil. I sat on the floor of the guest room closet and held it for a while before unfolding the paper it protected. There it was. My name, my signature, the clean, inked truth of ownership. I had already confirmed everything with Virginia, but touching the original made it feel final, real. This house, every creaking floorboard, every water spot on the ceiling, every rose bush out front, was mine. And not because Nathan had allowed it, not because anyone had granted me permission, because I earned it. Still, there was a strange ache beneath that truth, one I didn't expect. I'd carried so much love for that boy. Still do, in a quiet, bruised kind of way. I changed his diapers, taught him to tie his shoes, sat through miserable middle school band concerts with a smile that hurt my cheeks. He used to bring me weeds from the backyard and call them flowers. When he cried, he always hid under the kitchen table, and I'd have to crouch there next to him and wait for the world to feel safe again. Now I see him hiding behind contracts and legal language. Same fear, new shape. The house was quiet when I came out of the guest room. I didn't bother putting the deed back in the closet. I left it on the kitchen table beside a pen, not as an invitation, as a declaration. That afternoon, Zach came by. No backpack this time. Just a paper bag with lemon muffins and that anxious energy that lives in people who know too much too young. "I brought these from the bakery," he said. "Thought you might be low on sweet things." I smiled. "I've got a pantry full of sugar, but thank you." He didn't sit until I gestured. "I saw Dad last night," he said, eyes fixed on the table. "He's angry." "I imagine so," I replied. "He said you made a scene." "Did I?" Zach looked up. "Not really, but he thinks so. Said you embarrassed him." "Good," I said. He needed it. Zach let out a nervous laugh. "He said you're overreacting, that you misunderstood." "I didn't," I said. "But even if I had, I'd still be allowed to say no." He nodded, quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry." I looked at him. "For what?" "For all of it. For not saying something sooner. For pretending I didn't notice." "You're 17, I said. "You're not responsible for your father's choices." He swallowed. "He said I should stop visiting, that I was choosing sides." "And what do you think?" "I think he doesn't understand what sides are anymore." That stopped me. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "You're a good boy," I said. "You're not the reason this house turned cold." We sat there for a long time, sipping tea and sharing one of the muffins. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, and meant it. Before he left, he turned at the door. "You know," he said, "I think Grandpa would be proud of you." I smiled at that. "Maybe," I said, "but I think he would have told me to lock the doors and hire a security system." Zach laughed, and then he was gone. I stood in the hallway a while, listening to the stillness. It didn't sound empty. It sounded like mine. Later that evening, I took the deed to Virginia's office. We made copies, notarized one, locked another in a fireproof safe. When I came home, I left a note on the table, folded neatly beside a photograph of the house in 1982. It said, "Ownership is not inheritance. It's memory, work, and the will to protect it." Nathan never came to pick it up. Zach came back with an apology not meant for him. He stood in the doorway like someone delivering news from a broken radio, awkward, unsure if the message was still worth repeating. It was Sunday morning. I was in the garden, kneeling beside the rosemary bush Walter had planted the year Zach was born. Its roots had stretched so far now that it cracked the stone edging around the bed. Still growing, still alive. Some things have more will to endure than others. "Grandma," Zach said, "can we talk?" I stood slowly, knees popping like firecrackers, and wiped the dirt from my hands. "If it's another apology," I said, "you can save it. You didn't do anything wrong." He stepped down onto the path and looked around. "You've kept everything the same." I smiled faintly. "No, dear. It just looks the same. The locks are new. The insurance is updated. The documents are ironclad. The rest, it's just paint and habit." He nodded, swallowing. "Dad's not doing well." I shrugged. "He built the fire. Now he's surprised it burns." Zach looked pained. "He says you've cut him off, financially." "I have. And emotionally." "That too," I said. "But only because he keeps mistaking manipulation for affection." He took a deep breath. "He wants to talk. He asked me to say that." I met his eyes. "And what do you want, Zach?" He blinked. The question caught him off guard. "I want to know you're okay." "I am." He seemed to weigh that. "He's angry at me. Says I betrayed the family." "Then he's forgotten what family is." We walked to the porch and sat. The old swing creaked beneath us but held, like always. "I feel like I broke something," he said. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "You just refused to lie about what was already broken." He looked down at his hands. "He used to be different." "So did I said. "But grief changes people. So does comfort." He got used to thinking I'd never say no. Zach was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Are you still putting me in the trust?" I turned to look at him fully. "Do you think you should be?" He hesitated. "I didn't say anything to get anything. I couldn't let him do it to you." I reached over and patted his knee. "That's why you're in it." His face twisted, emotions he didn't know how to handle rushing to the surface. "But there are conditions," I added. "You get access when you turn 25. Earlier if I'm gone. And only if you stay in school or hold a full-time job. No games. No shortcuts." He nodded quickly. That's fair. Of course. You're the only one who knocked on my door because you were worried about me, not my paperwork." He looked down again. "I just want us to be okay." "We are," I said. "But you need to understand something. You didn't ruin anything. Your father's choices did. All you did was shine a light." He nodded. Before he left, he pulled something from his backpack. An envelope. "It's from Dad," he said. "He asked me to give it to you." I took it, but didn't open it. "You gonna read it?" Zach asked. "Maybe," I said. "But not because he asked. I'll read it when I feel like it." He smiled faintly. "That makes sense." After he left, I stood on the porch for a while, envelope still sealed in my hand. I didn't know if it held an apology or another manipulation, a plea or a trap, but I didn't feel nervous. Because the difference now was this: there was nothing left to steal. My home was mine again, my voice too, and I wasn't waiting for anyone to grant me permission to use it. I went to the notary in my Sunday dress. Not because I needed to impress anyone. The woman behind the desk looked like she barely noticed. But because I wanted to feel strong, clean, put together. The kind of woman who still knows exactly where her shoes are and doesn't lose her nerve signing papers. It was pale blue. Cotton. The dress Walter once said made me look like I owned the sky. I ironed it that morning, pressed the collar. buttoned it all the way up. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see an old woman preparing for battle. I saw someone reclaiming her name. Virginia was already there when I arrived. She stood to greet me, firm handshake, calm eyes. She had her briefcase, her legal pad, and a quiet smile that meant everything was already handled. "I've got the documents," she said. "They're exactly as you requested. No room for clever edits." We sat down across the long wood table. I pulled out my ID, laid it neatly beside me, and opened the pen Virginia offered. Smooth, black, heavy in the hand. I liked the weight of it, like something permanent. The notary was a soft-spoken woman with good posture and no patience for small talk. "Initial here," she said, "and here, and sign full name at the bottom." I signed. It took less than 20 minutes. A house, a will, a future. Decided and inked with the stroke of a pen I didn't ask permission to hold. "I'll file these with the county by Monday," Virginia said. "The trust will be active by the end of the week. Zach's portion will be sealed until the age we discussed." "And Nathan?" She looked at me carefully. "He's excluded. Cleanly. Legally. If he contests it, he'll lose. He knows that." I nodded. Good. There was a moment, just a breath, where it all sank in. The years, the silence, the ways I'd made myself smaller so he wouldn't feel guilty for asking for more, and the ways he asked for more even when I had nothing left to give. But I didn't cry. Instead, I thanked Virginia, stood tall, and walked back to my car in that pale blue dress, sunlight catching the hem like a quiet applause. When I got home, I opened every window in the house. Let the late summer air in. Let the dust out. I walked barefoot across the living room floor, through the kitchen, into the hallway, as if rediscovering the place not just as my home, but as mine alone. I cooked that evening, not for anyone else, just for me. Chicken, lightly seasoned, roasted carrots, a glass of wine. I lit a candle, set a single place at the table, and ate in silence. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. At the end of the meal, I poured another glass of wine and walked to the back porch. The hydrangeas were blooming again, not as full as they used to be, but holding on. Like me. Still rooted. Still standing. I took a deep breath and watched the light fade from the sky. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel watched or evaluated or reduced. I felt whole. Just a woman in her own house, wearing the sky. The envelope sat unopened for 6 days. I moved it from room to room like an afterthought. It rested on the kitchen counter beside the recipe box, on the hallway table next to Walter's old flashlight. Once, I found it on the windowsill by the sink. Must have placed it there while rinsing tomatoes and forgotten. Or maybe I'd been testing myself, seeing how long I could resist the pull of unfinished business. It was addressed in Nathan's handwriting. I knew it the moment I saw the slant of the N. I'd seen that handwriting on birthday cards, thank you notes, and one sharply written letter from summer camp the year he broke his wrist. But this wasn't that kind of letter. I finally opened it late on the 6th night, after a storm had rolled through and left the house heavy with silence. I brewed tea, sat by the lamp. No drama, no trembling fingers. Just a quiet need to finish something he had started without asking. It wasn't long. A single page written in blue ink. No greeting. Just a name. Mom, I shouldn't have done what I did. I see that now. I told myself it was practical, that I was protecting the future. But the truth is, I didn't want to wait. I didn't trust that you'd leave it to me, and I wanted to guarantee it while I still could. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I know I've taken too much. I know I made you feel disposable, and I hate that the boy you raised turned into someone who made his mother question her own mind. You were never confused, Mom. I was. Still am. I won't ask for anything else. I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say this, finally, without trying to win or argue or explain. I was wrong. Nathan, I read it once. Then again, he'd written it like someone admitting a debt they couldn't repay. No promises, no bargaining, no hint of manipulation, unless you squinted hard. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer with the mismatched coasters and old batteries. Not out of anger, just because. There was a time that letter would have broken me wide open. That time had passed. Because you learn something when you stop hoping for the apology to fix everything. You realize the apology isn't the healing. You are. I didn't call him. I didn't write back. I didn't rush to make peace or to leave the door swinging open. I let the apology sit in its place, just like the envelope had, and allowed it to exist without letting it move the furniture around in my heart. That night, I slept without waking. No dreams, no pacing, just stillness. When I woke up, the air felt lighter. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was me. I made coffee, took my time, sat on the porch as the sun rose over the roofline, casting a soft gold across the lawn. The house was mine, the future was mine, and the story, the truth of it, was mine too. No signature would be taken from me again. They tried to take my house. I rebuilt something stronger. Not with bricks, not with new locks or fancier paperwork, but with something no one can quietly sign out from under me again. Clarity. A full, firm voice. The kind that doesn't tremble when asked, "Are you sure?" Because yes, I'm sure. The funny thing is, the house itself hasn't changed. Still the same creak in the hallway floor near the bathroom. Still the same faded curtain in the guest room. Still Walter's favorite chair, sagging a little more each year, but solid where it counts. But the silence in the house is different now. It's no longer filled with fear or suspicion. It doesn't ask, "What did I miss?" or "What's happening behind my back?" Now, the silence feels earned, like a clean kitchen at night, like sheets drying in the sun. I see things more clearly now, not because of age, but because I finally stopped letting other people describe the world to me. Especially people who benefit from me not asking questions. I talk to Virginia once a week. We've started meeting on Wednesdays for lunch. She doesn't charge me for that time. She just shows up. We talk about old times, about the law, about how many women we know who were told just sign here by someone who said it with a smile. Zach visits more now, too. Not out of guilt, not because of inheritance, just because. He brings muffins. Stories from school. His eyes are steadier. He's learning what it means to speak up before silence becomes betrayal. And Nathan? Well, he hasn't been back. He sent one more letter. This one said, "I understand your decision. I hope one day we'll talk again. Maybe we will. I haven't burned the bridge. I've just learned I'm allowed to stand on my own side of it. People ask why I didn't press charges, why I didn't make a louder mess of it. But I've lived long enough to know that some victories don't need courtrooms. Sometimes it's enough to say no and mean it so fully that it echoes through every corner they tried to claim. I was never too old. I was never too confused. I was just too polite to believe I could say, "That's mine, and you don't get to touch it." But I believe it now. So here I am, 68 years old, drinking tea on the porch I almost lost. Telling this story not for sympathy, I don't need it, but for the woman reading this who wonders if she's imagining things. If the tension in her gut is just nerves, if it's too late to take her name back, it's not too late. If they've made you feel invisible, be louder. If they've asked you to wait quietly, stand up instead. If they've smiled while taking from you, remember that love doesn't look like erasure. And if you're sitting in a house that you built with your bare hands and steady heart, protect it. Not just the walls, but the life inside them. You. Because they'll call it preparation, practicality, help. But sometimes help has hands that take. And you, my dear, have hands that remember how to hold on. So hold. And when you're ready, speak. If this story found you at the right time, let it stay with you. And if it made you feel something true, share it. Not for me. For the woman like you, sitting in silence, still deciding if she's allowed to say no.